Hey, what's up? This is Matt Maher. You're watching Soundcheck at ONCOURSE Online.
Hey, this is Amber with ONCOURSE Soundcheck, and we are here with Matt Maher. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Such an honor to meet someone that I really respect their music and has really been a part of my personal devotional life. Tell me a little bit about what goes into writing a song for you, the worship songs.
Well, I think at this point in my life, it hasn't really changed much. I think, I studied music growing up and kind of knew that I was sort of inclined in that direction. But I think for me, when I was about 19 years old was when I had a conversion and gave my heart to Christ. And I think from the process of getting involved in youth ministry, because I started helping out with the youth group right away, songs came out of my own kind of personal prayer relationship with Jesus. And so I think now for me, inspiration can come from a lot of different things. Like I'm married now and I have a boy, and right now I just feel like God is speaking to me a lot just in the process of learning how to be a father and, just delighting in my son. And, so God's speaking a lot in that. But I just think, you never really know when you're going to get inspired. Yeah. Could be a conversation, it could be a quote you read. And I think in all of those moments when you're inspired, you have an opportunity to, as an artist, to create something. And so I think for me, I've definitely, made an attempt that a good portion of the music that I write and create are songs for the church. Yeah. And I think they just, they come out of that, that relationship with God, and I think the Holy Spirit has an active role in it too. I think, he's that creative aspect, a part of the Trinity, and and I love there's this image in Genesis before creation happens that it says the Spirit of God hovered over the waters, and I feel like sometimes that's what happens with a song is God, it just sort of he's just sort of hovering. Yeah. And I think out of that, songs come, and I think when you're writing, you might turn to I turn a lot to the scriptures, turn a lot to writings from believers who've gone before us, and it's all part of it.
I think there's such beauty in really connecting. I talk, even when I teach about creativity and writing, talk about how we should be the most creative force, because we are the only human being. We're the part of creation that God actually literally breathed His breath in, and that spirit breath and that connection. And Christians, we get it. We have that connected force. What is one thing maybe that you've learned this year about God, that maybe a new discovery?
Oh, wow. I think the most profound thing I've learned, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a new thought. I think the depth of it has changed, is in being a father. In holding my son and delighting in him, and whenever I do, I'm like, there's always this immediate thing of I feel like he's standing over my shoulder, and he's whispering into my ear this is, I gave you this to help illustrate in a deeper way the love I have for you, and so I would say that I think that's the biggest thing that God is showing me, that that there's something about in parenthood, about being a father, or being a mother, where you learn this paternal, maternal aspect of God as a parent, who you understand the Trinity more. It's still a mystery, but you start to get when you have this unconditional love for this other being, and they don't do anything that really makes them deserve it, In
Yeah.
fact, you just have it.
Yes.
And so I think for me, that's probably been the biggest aspect. Is the more I delight in my Son, the more I feel like God draws me into the mystery of how He delights in His Son.
Mm-hmm.
And now, as Paul says, we're co-heirs. We've been adopted into that family. That that the same delight that God has in His Son Jesus, He has in all of us.
I know you talked about, reading the scriptures
Mm-hmm.
and being a father and how all these aspects of your life has influenced your songwriting. What music inspires you, or artists out there right now?
Well, I think I grew up playing a lot of different kinds of music. I grew up playing, actually I played trombone for 8 years. I played in an orchestra, youth orchestra. I was kind of a band nerd.
Yeah.
So I still sometimes will turn to kind of, classical music for inspiration. I tend to like, there was the period of the sort of late 18th or late 19th, early 20th century
Mm-hmm.
composers that I really, really like. There's an American composer, his name was Aaron Copland. He wrote a lot of music in the early part of the 20th century. There's that stuff. And then I grew up listening to classic rock, so I grew up listening to the Beatles and Rolling Stones, and I tend to gravitate towards that type of music. In terms of newer music, I'd say, the new Derek Webb album's actually really great, and he's a great friend.
You have to say Brandon Heath, don't you?
Well, yes. Well, Brandon's record is really, really a great job. He did he took a lot of risks.
Yeah.
And so I'm proud of him for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. Like, we live in a time now where there's more music being created than ever before, I feel like, and so there's just a lot of really great options out there to, to kind of gravitate. I think I find myself. It's funny though, like, and I hate to go back to it, but it's like when you're a parent, like now I listen to whatever, I'm starting to listen to whatever my kids are listening to. So like, I come home and Backyardigans is playing, and so like I have those songs stuck in my head now for days.
Then you just pray for that to be or something.
Yeah,
But it is fun. You know what I think just seeing the creative spirit of children and and what amazes them is exciting, and it teaches you to recapture wonderment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say this too, just to go back to, in terms of like what am I listening to.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I'm excited about is it feels like lately there's been a lot of much more emphasis in music on or sort of organically created music that's sort of created there in the moment, and it's less and less emphasis on something that's been pre-recorded. And,
yes.
And that excites me because I just think there's something. What separates, I feel like, a big part of Christianity from all the other faiths or religions of the world is that God took on flesh. Mm-hmm. And so there's this inherent element, I think, in our faith that Jesus was fully God, but he was fully man. And so God gets involved in the midst of our, in the midst of our lives. And so I love the fact that, that there's that incarnational aspect of our faith. And so for me, that when it comes to worship or when it comes to art that gets created for it, that it makes sense that the more and more it could just be, organic and like on the spot. I feel like there is something very unique and special about that.
That is true. Now you're working on your album coming out hopefully in the spring.
Yeah, but so what I've kind of realized is that in my 7 years of touring, there is something that I love and that's unique and special about when you play a song live. Mm-hmm. It changes from just the recording, and you don't want to play it exactly like it is on the recording because that was you're capturing a moment in time. And so what happened was I was on tour with Third Day over in the spring, and I was talking with Ty, the bass player, about, kind of what was next. He's like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to make another album? And I was like, well, I don't really know. And he's like, yeah, he said, he's like, have you ever thought about making a live record? And I just thought, it's funny because I thought about it and a lot of people have brought it up. So this next album is, and we don't know what it's titled yet.
Yeah.
It's sort of a combination of a lot of the songs that people have come to know, kind of represented in a live format, so it's different. And basically, we've been recording on the road as we go.
Oh, wow.
So rather than do just sort of like a single event and try to get everything in one night, we're trying to just get it as it's happening on the road in different cities.
That's kind of exciting.
It's great, and the neat thing will be about it is that on the back, there'll be Alive Again, or Your Grace Is Enough, recorded at such and such. And so I feel like there's a neat thing about it for people to say, oh, I was there.
Yes,
there is. And so so that's the live part of it, and then we'll be recording 3 or 4 new songs in the studio as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Now you're out on tour now.
Mm-hmm.
How long are you going to be?
Well, Brandon and I, we're on the the Blue Mountain tour, and we're on tour for 6 weeks. So we'll go through right until the last weekend before Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And then I take a week and a half off, and then I'm touring a bit, 2 weekends in December, and then off for the rest of the year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you get to be a dad for the rest of the year.
I do, and next spring we're actually. Probably by the time this airs, I'll be touring with Chris August.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
And a band called Bella Reeve. They're a worship band from Florida.
Oh, wow.
So really, really talented young guys. So
cool.
So we're excited about that.
That's awesome. Well, any one final wrap-up thought? How would you want to encourage kids today and to rediscover their walk in Christ?
I think the biggest thing I would encourage a young person to do. I feel like one of the hardest things that we're facing right now as a church is that there's a growing just gap or lack of providing a space for silence. And the problem is that when church becomes just as busy as the rest of our life, there's no distinction between the two. And what I've noticed in my own life is that it has been, even in worship, it's been in the stillness of moments where after I've sung a powerful song, it's been in the stillness that, the Spirit of God has come and moved in my heart. And there's something about that intimate nature. It's not so much about the silence as it is about that it creates a space for intimacy. So my encouragement to young people is, try to cultivate that while you're in high school, while you're part of a great youth group, because that'll carry you through college, and that'll be just a good part of your spiritual character. I think that will help continue to form you.
Wow, that's such a good word. We need more quiet. We need more quiet spaces.
Yeah.
And we don't need to bring our cell phones everywhere.
We had great quiet time in kindergarten. I mean, it was all there.
Everybody lay on a mat.
Yeah, everybody lay on a mat. Have a glass of milk, take a nap. I don't know why we still don't do it.
I think we should now go lay on a mat and have a glass of milk. Well, thanks so much for being with us. There's so much.
Thanks for having me.